Yeah, cool. So, hi guys. Thank you everyone for joining. Just a bit of background. We are basically doing this webinar with like I'm the co-founder of Rise. We're doing this webinar in partnership with Shad, and I think I'll let Constantine introduce what Shad does, but I'll take the liberty of introducing what Rise does, and we're joined by Dr. Darlene Lim as well. And I think I'll keep this brief. I think you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to the mentor. So I'll tell you a bit about what we do. Maybe Constantine can explain what Shad does, and then we can jump right into the bulk of the session. So a bit about Rise. We're basically an organization that helps high school students conduct research. We do this by pairing them up with mentors from the top universities all across the world. So on our team, we have now almost 250, 300 mentors from Ivy Leagues, Oxford, Cambridge, etc., etc. We mentored over 1,000 students from all over the world. Some of those in the webinar at the moment are our students as well. So from Jakarta, from India to all the way to the US, to Australia, everywhere else. We have almost 40 countries represented in our student community. And we help students, once they've written the research, to also submit these to international journals and conferences, especially high school journals and conferences such as IEEE, Concord Review, etc., etc. So if you are interested in what we do, feel free to email us at contact@riseglobaleducation.com or do visit our website as well. Yeah, could you? Next slide. Yeah. Yeah, so I think why is research important? So research is important for a variety of reasons. I think from your perspective, it would be important because it teaches you there's so much more than the subjects that you learn at school. There's so much more depth to them. So everyday research we see research around us uh, every day. And these research breakthroughs really allow us to live our lives like we live them today. It helps you gain expertise in topics. So let's say someone is wanting to study economics at university, you're able to get a flavor of what that economics would look like before you actually step into university itself, right? And obviously, it helps you stand out in the admissions process as well because it counts as a super curricular activity, which is typically research is one of the only ways to get this kind of check mark on your college application resumes. So, yeah, Christian, next slide. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we work in a variety of fields. We're subject agnostic. So as you can read here, we've worked with students in data science, AI/ML, financial math, and public policy. These are just some short examples of the work that we do, and then we help in the relevant publications in the journals as well. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Constantine to introduce Shad and what do you guys do? Thank you.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction, Rise, and really thank you for Rise Global Education for co-organizing this session today. We have, as we can see, we have students coming from all over the world, and it's truly inspiring to see so many curious minds gathered here to get together to learn and to share, to dream big. So my name is Constantine Yu. I am the Director of Lead Generation at SHAD Canada. So I'm very happy to introduce you briefly about SHAD. And now we saw some SHAD alums here. So I'm going to make this very short. Can we go to next page, please? So SHAD is basically the longest running STEAM and entrepreneur program in Canada. We've started in 1981 and it has been 45 years. Right now we have over 25,000 alums around the world. What was started with the small summer program now has grown into a national movement of innovation learning. Over the decades, we've built this network of alums, educators, and institutions. And this year, we have 30 post-secondary institutions join our network to provide summer programs in their campuses. Can we go to the next one? So we have different formats, and if you're interested in SHAD, you can just always visit our website, shad.ca, to learn more. But for students who are overseas, SHAD Virtual is actually one of the better program that you can actually study or participate even within your home country. So that's a good one. And of course, if you want to spend a summer here in Canada on a Canada University, you can always sign in for our Living A Plus and Unplugged program. And moving on. So one of the topic that shared is, or one of the key traits shared is our design challenge. So every year we have a topic over the state of art problems or real world problems that the world or society is facing. So you will be working with your team to solve that problem. And here is a list of all the problems that we have for the past 10 years. Each year you will get the problem when you arrive on the camp. So you will spend that month working with your peers and learning new tools, new knowledge to solve those problems. It's actually very a mind refreshing process to learn. And I think Dr. Darlene, as one of the alums of us in 1989, I don't know what their topic is, but I think that definitely has influence on her research life later. So without further ado, let's move on to next page. Let me just do a brief introduction of and move on. Thank you. A brief introduction of Dr. Darlene Lim. So Dr. Darlene, and it is absolute pleasure to have Dr. Lim with us today. So Dr. Darlene is a Shed alum from 1989 and is currently a research scientist at NASA Ames Research Center. She's a co-lead of NASA's Real-Time Science and System Group and deputy project scientist for NASA's Viper lunar mission, and later in the NASA Viper Science Operation and Integration Operation Project. She'll talk more about her life, but I'll just pass on to Dr. Lim so that Dr. Lim can start giving stories about her research life. Thank you, Dr. Lim.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Constantine. And thank you very much to the RISE team and to the SHAD team for enabling this conversation today. So I am Darlene, and I grew up in Canada, actually in Edmonton, Alberta, which is on the west coast of Canada. And I now live, as Constantine told you, in the United States, in the San Francisco Bay Area, where NASA Ames is located. So I am here to give you a short kind of overview of life as I've known it. And then we can move very quickly into your questions. And I'm very happy to keep this as formal or informal as the moderators would like, and to take questions and to talk about, anything you all are curious about, because curiosity is fundamentally the base of and the foundation of my conversation with you all today. Staying curious your entire life, that is the elixir of youth. That is the elixir of just allowing for so many different experiences that will broaden you in ways which are incredible and which in your youth you might not even know you can have access to. We're going to be talking about resilience, about adaptability, and how that's a theme you've probably heard before, which I believe will, stay the test of time and be relevant in your lifetimes as well. I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about, as I mentioned, where I have traveled. I will tell you that my path has not been a straight line. When I talk with any youth of any age, ranging from as young as, like 2 or 3 years old when they can converse with me, or all the way, into graduate school and so forth. It's different ways of communicating just joy and curiosity is what I tend to focus on, because it really is a matter in your life of taking the next step in a way which seems right to you, that allows you to move to the next thing. And it may not be exactly in a straight line, but you'll get to where you're going. I totally believe that. Okay, so let me share this right now and see if I can press play. Okay, you guys see this? All right, perfect. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Canada. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents came from Singapore when Singapore was a very different country than it is today. We landed in Canada. My parents worked very hard, very kind of typical immigrant story, but of course with the untypical experiences in between. But I know that when I was young, because we were in Alberta, there was a lot of opportunity to be outside. And my parents took full advantage of that to really embrace being Canadians and new Canadians, that they wanted to, really share that experience and have my experience and my sister's experience be different than theirs. So as I mentioned, we were outside a lot. We did a lot of camping, a lot of hiking, a lot of fishing. And here's the funny thing about my fishing experiences is that I would go with my father and I would sit by a lake with him and he would say, hey, let's go fishing today. So we would do that. But he never really prioritized teaching me how to fish. So I'm not, people always assume when I tell the story, I'm a remarkable fisherman, but I'm not. I actually am quite terrible. But he would fish and I would sit beside him and I was about, 5 or 6 and I would watch. But it was a wonderful experience because we were beside a lake for hours and hours at a time, with him trying, to catch dinner. And me, I was just observing the environment. And looking back, I know that experience stuck with me. I didn't have, anything to entertain myself with other than sometimes I would bring a few books, but as a 5-year-old, you're kind of limited. You're not reading anything that's like 400 or 500 pages. Instead, I had the environment to entertain myself with, and freedom to walk around the lake, freedom to walk up and down the pier, freedom to go and explore and just listen to things and just watch my father. And I think that presentness is really what stuck with me, and the joy of watching how dynamic the environment around me was very inspirational in many ways. And it has stuck with me to this day. And I found that the more I looked, the more I observed, the more I panned in and panned out, the more I could see. That was what allowed me to become interested in being an observational scientist. And at a young age, I was also watching Jacques Cousteau. That was a remarkable series that was on TV. Very little things that were available to us on TV at that moment in time, but that was there, and that was incredibly inspirational as well. So I wanted to be an explorer. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't even have the words for it. I just knew I wanted to do that kind of thing. And you can imagine that as the daughter of immigrant parents, this was not something that I shared openly with my parents, because, they want you to go on and get a higher degree and have a more traditional job in many different ways. But this matter of wanting to explore, as I said, I did not have these words for it. These came to me much later in life, but I knew there was something about being out there and testing the limits and going beyond where I was that I really wanted. So pan forward a number of years into my graduate studies, I actually focused on environmental science and climate science through my graduate work, and I worked in the Canadian high Arctic. So this is a photograph of me working on Devon Island in the Canadian high Arctic. It's about 75 degrees north latitude. I sampled lakes and ponds throughout the Canadian high Arctic and got my first introduction into field science and field work. I was also involved at this time in the Hot Mars Research Project, which was a NASA project that was camped out in the high Arctic to examine human operations as it pertained to getting humans to Mars. And so that was a very wonderful interaction that I had as a graduate student, at first as a master's student and then embedded as a PhD student. And there was a lot of, kind of story that happened in between that resulted in me being part of that program, as well as part of the program that I was enlisted in at the University of Toronto. Over the course of these field excursions to do my graduate work, I had many different experiences. In this particular case, I was at a lake sampling, and just before we touched down on the other side of the lake, we noticed that there was a polar bear, and we had to kind of, as a group in the helicopter, make a lot of quick decisions and decide that it was safe for me to actually sample at the other end of the lake. But all of that decisioning happened very quickly. It happened collaboratively. It happened with a great bunch of people who were very able to get organized, because we had spent so much time together over the summer, towards making a decision that was safe and that was productive. And that kind of experience, this is one of many, has stuck with me over my professional life as well as my personal life, in affecting what I've been interested in and affecting the belief that I have that humans, when properly supported, when properly organized and given the right structure, that we can actually collaborate in ways which go beyond kind of long time scales. We can make decisions very quickly together that are productive, that are safe, that are meaningful towards things such as science and research productivity. Going further forward over time, during my tenure at NASA, I've had the joy of being a part of and leading what many different field programs that are based in field work, but which we spend 92% of the time kind of behind the scenes, preparing, doing testing, getting ready before we go into the field. And these field programs have been focused on understanding how to embed science decisioning, real-time science, so very rapid decisioning of science. As you can imagine, just a few seconds ago, I described my early exposure to this kind of environment in graduate work, and even before that, and that affected my research as I was moving into NASA. I came to NASA from Canada because I wanted to find a place where I could explore science, exploration, operations, and engineering all in one real, really intense environment, which I found at NASA. And I've stayed here ever since. And so I came over in 2004. So it's been a little over 20 years that I've been here. And as I said, it's been a really remarkable experience. And over the course of the experimentation, the field work that I've done, I've had the absolute joy of working in some incredible places, and most of all, meeting very incredible human beings. And that has led me to this moment that I'll talk about for a minute, where I'm now applying all of this research into a flight mission. So of course, most of you understand that we are moving into an era where lunar exploration will become, really a priority for many different agencies around the world. And right now I am working on a lunar rover mission at NASA that is headed to the moon, to the lunar South Pole, to explore for water ice. So let me give you a bit of a flavor for that. And I also want to tell you that the work that we're doing currently, and that all the research that I've done in the past, also supports understanding how to integrate a science team on Earth in support of EVAs, what are called extravehicular activities, or human exploration on the surface of Mars. So we, in the course of our research, have looked at different planetary destinations, have tried to understand the operations that are required, and the setup and the organization, again, of how to support human beings to work in these extreme environments under these high intensity and conditions, and still make collaborative decisions in a meaningful and productive and safe way. The research that I've done to date has also, worked in different ways. We've pivoted in different ways. I've supported emergency and disaster response activities as well. And again, it's because through the course of research, you can kind of squint and look, take a step back and come forward. So that pan in and pan out that I mentioned that I did as a kid, that comes in very handy again when you're trying to understand what is valuable towards supporting real-time collaborative decisioning for science, enabling, disaster response activities, enabling lunar activities, enabling Mars exploration activities. So this is the mission that I'm currently working on. It's called Viper. And as I said, it is headed to the lunar South Pole in a region, in the Nobile crater region. And while it is there, it will conduct a mission that will take us across about 15 kilometers of the lunar surface over a 100-day period. We're going to be in sunlit areas. We're also going to be transitioning into what are called permanently shadowed regions, areas on the moon that haven't seen sunlight in over 1 billion years. And it is these areas in particular that we're interested in exploring because of their potential for reserves for such things such as water ice. So when we get to the surface of the moon with this rover, you see there's a tiny rover. Let's see if my mouse will show up. You can kind of see it in the bottom right there with the arrow. Unfortunately, my mouse isn't going to pop up. But that's the size of the rover, juxtaposed against the background of the lunar landscape. And we're going to be traversing or prospecting across all of these different types of ice stability regions where we expect water ice to be found. We hypothesize water ice to be found at different depths along the lunar landscape. And so we're going to be looking to see what we find. These are all, theories, and we're going to be trying to understand if that's real. So the neat thing about this mission, hopefully this animation is running at your end, is that unlike other deep space missions, as an example, where it takes a long time for a signal to leave the Earth, be received by a spacecraft, and then make its way back again if there's some data or telemetry that needs to be sent back to Earth. In the case of the moon, in the one up top, you're seeing an animation of a signal leaving the surface of Earth and heading to Mars, and it's gonna take a while. I think this one is scheduled for like a 15-minute round trip. The one on the bottom is a signal that you're seeing delivered between the Earth and the moon. So that was much faster. Let me see if I can play that one again. It just kind of ping pongs back and forth. And that's because the signal time for sending and receiving between the Earth and moon is about 1.3 seconds or so, maybe a little longer, depending on the, on the reception kind of network. And so what that means is we have the opportunity to receive and send data to the moon very rapidly compared to other missions that we've run in deep space. And so for us, what we've been doing as part of the Viper mission is actually setting up a framework of understanding in terms of how we will run the mission and how we will actually teleoperate the rover itself on the surface of the moon. And what ends up happening is that the rover drivers are going to put waypoints down and then send signals to the rover to actually move across 4 to 5 meters at a time. And that means we have about a 4 to 5 minute decision cycle on Earth to make a decision as to exactly where it is that we want to go on the lunar surface. We'll pre-plan everything, just like a trip that you might take to the grocery store. You'll plan your journey, but then, if you run up against some construction or an accident or anything that comes your way, you might have to deviate to pick up your friend on the way to the grocery store. That kind of decision happens in the moment, and we expect that to happen when we're exploring on the lunar surface. And so my job has been to organize our science team and also integrate with the broader mission operations team towards ensuring that every time that we make a decision on the surface of the moon, we are taking into account the collaborative mind, the collaborative hive mind of scientists that want to make decisions towards achieving our science goal and achieving broader lunar science goals as we explore the surface. So it's very exciting. It's the first of its kind in terms of an architecture for our agency. And what we're looking towards is really a future, your future, where you see many people, hundreds, thousands of people actually living and working on the surface of the moon, and really having a sense from this rover expedition, which is, a very, like kind of first foundational laying mission as to where the resources might be to sustain human populations. So with that, I think somebody's just unmuted. I'm going to leave it to the RISE admin to mute the participant. Thank you. So I will stop there. I think I'm no longer sharing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So great. So I'm not sure who's going to be the moderator, but I'm happy to take questions.
I'll take it from here.
Thank you.
Please give me 1 minute. I'll just share the presentation again. Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Kushi. I'm an associate here at RISE. And thank you so much, Dr. Darlene, for making time for this. Thank you, Constantine. It was lovely collaborating with you. I just want to apologize. We have a festival and I'm going to be hearing some loud sounds from my end. I hope it's not too bad, but people like to go a little crazy here. What I'm going to do is proceed with some questions that we have ready for Dr. Darlene, and I'll try to keep it as short as I can from my end. And then if anyone from the audience has questions for Dr. Darlene, we can also try to make time for that. Just give me 1 minute. All right, Dr. Darlene, I will start with my first question. What are some of the most challenging projects that you have been a part of, and how were the...
I'm sorry, I lost the second part of the question. I think you went mute just so it's, could you repeat it?
Yes, I'll just come again. What were some of the most challenging projects that you've worked on so far? And how were the results?
Okay, you got it. Every single project comes with challenges that it's funny, I could not prioritize which one is more challenging than the other. You would think that I would put the flight mission first. That, of course, is incredibly challenging. But every single expedition, every single mission that I've been on has come with a set of challenges that have really tested the bonds that I had with other human beings. And that really is the net result. And so some of the results that we've had, of course, like all the projects that I've been involved with have resulted in peer review publications, which in the scientific realm, as you guys were talking about early on with RISE and helping students, publish their work, publication, peer review publication is a measure of productivity. It's a measure of worth, really, of your work to the broader, research community, the one that you're particularly, embedded within, as an example. So those are some classic results from all of our projects, which I've always put as a priority for our teams, because we live in that world of science, exploration, operations, engineering. The science component is integrated throughout, but we have to publish. That's an absolute, box that we have to check coming out of every single project. But more broadly, in terms of results, there's been a longevity that's been associated with the projects that I've been involved with, in that every single project has been an evolution of the next. There's always been a vision that I've been working towards, and am now, embedded within an applied environment in the realm of a spaceflight mission. But I found that making an intentional understanding of what it is that you want to research as a researcher and then going after it has really been a guiding light throughout all of our projects. And the relationships that have come to bear to get us through all the challenges have been very important too. And some people have really stood out in the process. And many of those people that have stood out have been in many ways the same. They've always been, collaborative. They've always been resilient. They've always been problem solvers, but in a very thoughtful manner. They don't just jump in and throw a solution on the table. They tend to think about what's going on. They tend to ask questions. They're very curious individuals, and that leads them towards helping the group, move beyond their individual states of expertise into a more fluid state of collaboration, a real flow state as a team where we can solve some very complicated problems. I'll just tell you about some of those individuals. Many of the people that stand out for me over time that have actually worked with me, I've had the joy of working with them through many projects, have now gone on to different leadership roles in their own careers. Some of them are professors. Many of them are working on flight missions right now. One of them, for example, is actually an astronaut who is on the surface, is up in the International Space Station right now. So these folks have progressed in amazing ways, and it doesn't surprise me because they all have these kind of shared capabilities, and again, they're very much they very much stand out with their curiosity and resilience. Thanks, Kushi.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll just move on to the next question. What are some tips that you would give to an aspiring astrophysicist, or what are some things that you would encourage someone to do or pursue?
I would encourage, again, this sounds like I'm going to be a bit of a, on repeat here, but curiosity, just really keeping an open mind, not ever holding yourself back from something that looks interesting. That said, that has to be coupled with the capacity to finish what you said you would do. So one of the problems that we run into sometimes is we have people that want to come work with us. They're incredibly curious. They're incredibly capable, but there's a lack of finishing what you said you would do. And that really starts to kind of plague a person's career over time, because that you get a little bit of a reputation that you want to do a lot of things, but you can't actually finish what you started. And so it's incredibly important to, if you, for example, I'm just going to talk to folks out there that might be, in high school, might be in further along in their education. If you say that you're actually going to engage in a research project, because many people here, I'm sure, are interested in research, and you find that you want to pivot a little bit in a new direction because that's interesting to you, you have to have a conversation with the person that you're being supervised by and make sure that that's okay. But also, whatever you promise to do when you join that person, make sure that that's still important to the person you're working with, and complete that. So that's because that's important to the person who gave you that opportunity. So it's things like that, understanding that you're part of a team and how you might best embed yourself within that team and support that team is part of the curiosity. It's really understanding the people around you. It's not just a self-serving kind of curiosity. So that's the kind of attitude that I think will get a person very far in life and get them working on interesting problems, get them working with interesting people.
All right. So a lot of the students here have a question, and it pertains to the job market and just in the sense of the job projection in this field particularly, and how do you think it's looking maybe say 5 to 10 years down the line? Is it something that's stable?
So in the realm of job market in aerospace or research and technology, or what would you want me to focus on, Kushi?
Aerospace.
Aerospace. Okay, got it. I think I know we are in very, very interesting times. I will just speak about the United States in the moment. So of course there's NASA right now. I came to NASA for the reasons that I articulated earlier. And there really was no other place in the world to go to in that moment. The landscape is different now. There are startups that are flying. I mean, where they're not tiny startups. They have, thousands of individuals working towards lander systems, flight systems, payload systems of all sorts, heading to different destinations in our solar system, and in particular, the moon. There are organizations that are in place now, which of course are much larger, like Blue Origin, like SpaceX, which offer people in the aerospace community opportunities that did not exist when I, started on my career path. And then of course there are more traditional establishments as well, like the larger organizations like Lockheed Martin, et cetera. So if you're within Canada as well, there are different organizations as well that are, larger, smaller, but by and large, what has happened is that there's now been more players that have come to the table that are looking towards a lunar economy, supporting a lunar economy, supporting space flight throughout our solar system. And so I think it's looking up, for lack of a better expression. And I think as well that if you are somebody that is going into aerospace, to make sure that you take courses that are a little bit further afield from what you might initially think would be valuable to an aerospace engineer. So of course, like looking into the computer sciences. And again, computer science is a science. It is a way of thinking. And I think that's going to be very important, as well as looking into the social sciences, being curious about what other frameworks, what other perspectives you can build a knowledge base, what you can build within your own knowledge base in the realm of understanding humanity, understanding spaceflight, understanding our environment, and being very open-minded about gathering knowledge from different perspectives, I think will be very helpful towards being a thoughtful contributor towards the development of humanity in space going forward. That's what I hope. I hope we don't have people that have been, completely kind of closed off to other conversations, to other perspectives on the value of exploration in every sense of the word. I also want to encourage the fact that this is a planet. We're on a planet as well. And understanding that perspective very deeply. I feel very strongly about remembering that, which may seem like, something which is a ridiculous statement, but I think that is forgotten a lot when we talk about aerospace and exploration in our solar system.
All right, great. And thank you so much for explaining this to people who are not entirely in the field. I think you're doing an amazing job. And
Thank
I
you.
think it's also very very, very nice to hear from someone who's working in the field, but also someone who's able to explain it in a very storytelling kind of format. It really is extremely impactful, and I think it's something that we're all going to carry, at least something from this. What I would like to point towards now is that we're having a lot of questions come up in the group chat. Are you able to see them? And
Let me bring them
if
up.
you could just go through them and address a few of them, I think a
Sure.
lot of people are currently online. So
Okay, let me see here. What is the most, okay, I'll start with the one, and I guess, Kushi, if you see anything above, I see one at 9:32, and I think above that, I'm not sure that there was much input at that point in terms of questions, but I'll start with a question that came up at 9:32. What is the most difficult time that I experienced, and how did you get through it? Oh my goodness. So many difficult times. It's like I can't even pick out one. I'll tell you, like, okay, I'll just go back in time to, this was an interesting moment. I graduated with a biology degree, an undergraduate biology degree in Canada, and I happened to get recruited to work in an advertising agency coming out of college. And I also got a position at Queen's to do graduate work. And so you can imagine there were two pathways that definitely did not seem connected in that moment. And I had to make a decision. I was very excited about the graduate work and very surprised and excited in a different way about being recruited into this ad agency. And so I went to talk to my graduate supervisor, and he said to me, he's like, hey, I think you should go, you know, if you want to come work with me, great. But if you want to go do this advertising experience, go do it, but only do it for 2 years and then stop yourself and ask yourself, you know, in a very truthful way, do you want to continue doing this work, or do you want to go back to graduate school? And he's like, if you don't ask yourself that question in 2 years, it will be 5 years, it will be 10 years, and you will not leave. And so that was literally one of the most important bits of feedback. That doesn't even like kind of give it the due respect, but that was such amazing guidance in my life in that moment, because that is exactly what I did. I decided to take a chance and go outside of what I had actually trained for and not do the graduate work and put that on hold. And I went and worked in an advertising agency in Toronto for, actually, it ended up being almost 3 years, because I worked 2 years full time. And then the long story is I went back to graduate school and I worked part-time my first year. But at the 2-year mark, I found that I loved the work that I was doing. I was an account executive. So that means you're interacting with clients, you're interacting with production, with creative, you're organizing everything. I learned how to interact in that manner. I learned about, building work back schedules, managing finances for very large, projects. And then at the end of that, I found that for the last 2 years of my spare time, while I was working in advertising, I was always reading science and nature, always. I was always watching documentaries that pertain to science. I wasn't watching, advertising reels, as an example. So I knew where my heart was. So I quit and I went back to school. But that was an incredible experience. And so much of what I learned as an account executive, I still use today. So this is what I mean by my path was not a straight line, but it was intentional. And the guidance that I got gave me that intentionality in that moment. And I think as much as you can really ask yourselves some very pointed questions at different stages in your life, because all of you will have these moments like this come up. That will be helpful in taking the next step and not ever looking back. And that is something that is important to do as well. So that was interesting. And in the moment, it was very difficult to make decisions. And that kind of thing has come up many times in life. There are many other experiences that we can get into, but I'm going to try and cycle forward and see, because I suspect we're going to get kind of similar questions. 3 words you would describe as the fundamentals of research on a general level. Do you think your research could have medical implications? I'm quite interested in learning about. I'm going to start with the second question. I do not dip directly into medical aspects of human spaceflight, though we have to integrate with human health and safety all the time in terms of how we manage not only the way that we develop architectures for human exploration and embedding science for exploration of the moon or Mars, but also how we manage our teams here on Earth. So we have very grueling schedules that we put our scientists through when we manage a spaceflight mission. Even when we manage many of the field programs that I've done, we put people on incredibly grueling schedules. And so we have to be very cognizant of how to support them and keep them safe, because we've operated in some very taxing, environments underwater, putting humans underwater in submersibles, divers, also up against the lip of active volcanoes. So all sorts of those types of things require human health and safety oversight. So we've done a lot of that, though the research that I do, as I mentioned, is not directly, it doesn't directly feed medical advancements. And so in terms of the third question, I would say learning about the research that I do. Again, you can read papers. There's a special issue that I'll direct you to in the journal Astrobiology. So if you type in NASA and then basalt, BASALT, and astrobiology, you'll see a special issue which has, I think, 13 papers in it. And that's a good place to start as an example. And that will give you hooks into other research and so forth. You can look online around NASA Viper. A lot of information will come up there. And then in terms of 3 words to describe the fundamentals of research on a general level, I would say rigor, I'd say curiosity, and I'd say adaptability. Those are 3 things that I think you can apply in any format, whether it's conversations with other human beings, the way that you set up your test and your lab experiments, your tests, your training, anything. Those are 3 things that I come back to all the time. Okay, the next question is, I have a question. What did you do when you constantly kept getting failures, and how did you overcome it? How did you manage all the opportunities you've received, and how do you proceed? Okay, great question. You just keep going. You just keep going. Holy cow, I have been beaten up. And the failures, they're not really failures. They're more like it just didn't work out in the way that you thought it was going to work out, right? It wasn't going to be that easy. But I have a dear colleague who said to me once when I was really feeling beat up, she's like, hey, Darlene, the work that you're engaged in, the stakes are really high, right? Like they're really, really high. And she's like, did you think this was going to be easy? Like, did you think that anything that you wanted, you would just get? And I remember as soon as she said that to me, I was like, oh yeah, what was I thinking? And I have repeated her guidance to me many times to many different people who have come up against the wall and wanted to quit, like these jobs that they had fantasized about their whole lives and they got, and then they ran up against a problem and they're like, I'm going to quit. And then I have said that to them, and it's remarkable. Like these people that have been just on the edge, they're just living their lives, and they don't see the bigger picture, that they are on this cutting edge of whatever it is that they're trying to do, and that it has been hard and they've been there before, and it's just getting harder because the stakes are getting higher. And so that guidance has stuck with me. And I hope that you will all use that to calibrate your lives, because I imagine you're here because you want to move forward, you want to progress, you want to be on the edge of discovery and research and so forth. So just remember, it is going to be hard. It is going to be hard, but you're not going to, like something that you cast as a failure. What is that? It's a failure is something which is cast that way as compared to a success. And again, success is just it's a bit of a mystery and a myth, right? It's as you define it. And so you have to be very cognizant of the fact that highs and lows, you kind of have to just be measured about how you react to either of them. Also with the way that you react towards other people's successes and failures. You don't have to overblow it. It's just part of the process. Okay, let's go to the next one. My question is how to create interest in some topic and how to dig down, how to start with it if you're especially targeting for PhD. Okay, as they experience needs some experience. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm taking away from this that you're working on a PhD, but you want to pivot a little bit and do something else. I'm just going to go with what I've imagined. I think you're asking about. Again, it comes down to, so that literally happened to me during my PhD. I agreed with my supervisor that I was going to tackle certain problems. I did that. I finished that. But over the course of my transition from my master's to my PhD, I got asked to be part of the Hot Mars project. And that was like totally amazing to me because again, I want to be an explorer. And I was like, wow, this is great. I get to take the Arctic, the polar science that I'm doing and adapt that towards astrobiology and human spaceflight. And so I got asked to do a couple different projects that were different than and would be added onto my PhD. And so I talked with my supervisor, who is incredibly wonderful human being to talk with, and laid out how these new opportunities were complementary to the initial work that I promised to do with her, and laid out a plan with her. And that, of course, was a constant conversation about how I was going to do the work that I promised her, plus do this other work. And as she saw me check boxes towards what I said I would do, that gave her more and more motivation to support me with the other things that I wanted to do. So it had to be a constant conversation. And I really do appreciate how open-minded she was towards that. Not every supervisor is like that. And I'll tell you that the way that she was has affected me to this day in the way that I supervise people. It's case by case, and it depends on the human and how reasonable they are towards working together towards goals as a partnership, and understanding that if you promise to do something, you probably should get that done. That's being mature and being professional about entry into the workforce, including as a graduate student. I think that's very important to know that you are a professional and that you should be professional about how you proceed on any problem set. You've highlighted the importance of having a collaborative hive mind in science. Do you have any advice on how you can begin building a network with your research or building a network in the field in general? So there's the classic methodology, which is, of course, to publish, do great work, get out there, give talks. I think that's really important. Going to conferences in the early stage of your careers, very, very important. And for me, it was more just going to a lot of different conversations, a lot of different presentations, and listening, and then going up and talking with the presenters and building a relationship that way. I, at a certain point, stopped going to conferences because of the nature of my work. Just, consumed my ability to go to as many meetings as I had previously done when I was younger or earlier in my professional life. But I found that early on that very much helped me kind of broaden my scope of understanding in the realm of the application of my research, the opportunities of broadening my research, and then working with other people and finding people that I wanted to work with. Hopefully that answers your question. I also know that, of course, your generation has a ton of access to different social media opportunities to be able to build your network that way as well. So I think that's an exciting opportunity too. Okay, let's see. A Viper mission, one of the most critical parts of designing, as we all know. Yep, my question is, which algorithm is used to enhance images? PSR is to finalize the landing site. Some idea about location. Yes, so so I have to be careful about how much detail I give in this conversation. I know we have an international gang here. So I would say to go to the answer to this question is there are publications around shape from shading. So if you go into, go online and just look up shape from shading, activities as it pertains to landing site selection, I think that's a good way to explore your question. As a student aiming to contribute to impactful research and publish internationally, how can I best develop a strong foundation in research methodology and design thinking? Great. Yeah. So in the realm of, I'm going to start with the second part first, design thinking, there's a lot online that you can get into, that you can read about in terms of process. Design thinking is a process. The rigor of the process, I think the more rigorous you are around design thinking, the better the outcome. Okay. And you have to also understand that most of your teams, most people will be in a group, they will fall along kind of a spectrum of interest in terms of engaging in design thinking. And so before you even start, you kind of have to bring your entire team up to speed on what your intentions are, what you want to do, and the value of design thinking, and really bring everybody together into that experience. So if that's something that you want to actually engage in, then make sure you do the research, make sure you understand what the process is, and then make sure that you communicate very clearly and have the patience to bring your entire team together to engage in design thinking. And developing a strong foundation in research methodology. So again, coming back to that mantra of rigor, I think it's easy to design a test which doesn't actually get at what the problem is. So taking the time to scope, like if you're, again, if this is, I'm talking about in a more collaborative manner. If you're doing your PhD or you're doing your master's, it's a lot different, right? You have a single question, you're going after it, you're going to follow scientific method towards understanding your problems and getting an outcome. But if you're in a more collaborative setting, which of course, when you move in professional STEM settings, it's always working with other people. You have to be very careful to design your tests such that you understand the moment that you're in. So how developed are your entire systems? What is it in particular that you're trying to test? You can't always test everything, especially when you're dealing with an integrated system. And so having those conversations and being extremely curious and open-minded to everybody's perspectives, and then trying to thread that needle and find exactly what it is that you're trying to test will be very helpful towards producing a rigorous methodology. Okay, how do you proceed during the early years? I think I've touched on that. Scientific literacy and the way you articulate ideas are really admirable. Thank you. Do you have any advice for someone trying to develop their scientific literacy? Okay, so I'm like an old lady now, so I can only read on paper. So I would literally stack up Science and Nature in my spare time and just read them like a magazine. Like, I love the New Yorker. I love reading. I read all sorts of magazines. I read Vogue. I read Architectural Digest. I read Vanity Fair, and I read all these science magazines, and I read books. So I read. I know a lot of consumption now is done through podcasts, through audio consumption, through watching videos and so forth. That's also great. My kids do that. That's a way of learning that they're very functional in, as I'm sure your generation is too. I find for me, just in terms of how I uptake and learn, is I have to read, and I have to read in a way where I have time to look up the words I don't understand, to follow up on what I'm reading, and put it all together in my brain and synthesize it towards seeing if there's a way to broaden, expand, really hone in on some aspects of a problem that I'm thinking about as well. So I learned things from all sorts of reading. You won't believe, like, I just brought a question to my team that came up while I was reading a Vanity Fair article on self-driving cars. So, it's like, it just, ideas come from everywhere, and then from talking with different people. How did your time at SHAD, if you remember, that's so funny. That's a great, I love the bracket thing, impact your career or your life choices? Oh my gosh, the great thing about SHAD was that I didn't know that engineering had so many sub-disciplines within it, as an example, or science. Like I was in high school, I was learning what I was being taught, and I had an idea of other things that were out there in the world, but I didn't know that there were ways to articulate it, like that there were categories of science, there were categories of engineering, there were categories of, we fill in the blanks. Like that was completely impactful. I also loved, again, coming back to people, meeting other people that were like-minded, that were interested in STEM, and that were athletic, and that were interested in the outdoors. That was so deeply impactful to me. How can you get involved in research from home as a high schooler? Oh, that's a tough one. That's I think nowadays, of course, you can do a lot of remote internships. A lot of kids that I work with do that, so that's an opportunity. I think there's a couple more questions. AI affected your work? Absolutely. What advice would you give for people looking to improve their critical thinking skills on analyzing reputable? Oh my goodness. I'm assuming that whoever asked this question, or Hannah, that it's linked with the use of AI. I think AI as a companion tool is, of course, incredibly useful. You should be conversive and very, very functional in AI tools. You should understand it as best you can. There's so much free knowledge right now online. I think, schools like MIT, as an example, put a lot of online free courses that can be consumed all over the world. Definitely dig into that to understand the landscape. I think that now is a very critical period for everyone to understand the nature of AI, the use and the application of AI, and the constraints of AI, and the restrictions and the limitations as they currently exist. My question is regarding how to proceed for commercialization of particular technology that we developed, knowing that we don't have prior knowledge of the market. Depends on the technology. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I think we're at time. Yeah.
Rishi? All right, thank you, Dr. Lin. We saw a lot of questions here. I do have one more question though. I think a lot of students actually are trying to learn more. Do you have like one book that you will recommend to the students if they want to, proceed to scientific research in the future? Like one book that could influence their decision or their learning?
No, I don't. And I wish, I know that's not a very satisfying answer, because you would love for me to give you the panacea to how to proceed in your life. My answer is read everything, like everything. Don't have any judgment about the consumption of knowledge, but always consume knowledge critically. Always consume knowledge critically. Who wrote this? Why did they write it? What is this, where did they get this knowledge from? Like, be a very critical consumer of information wherever you get that from. That's like, this is not a time where I think people can be satisfied with a single book to guide their entire lives. Like, there is so much that's coming at you. It's a different landscape. I have favorite books. I have a favorite author that I reread and read his books all the time. That's Steinbeck. And that's just me. That's very personal, because I love the way that he describes the natural world and the human world in such a matter-of-fact way. And there can be something very traumatic that happens, but he just kind of writes about it the same way he would write about an octopus. And I love the log of the Sea of Cortez. That was an expedition that Steinbeck took with Ed Ricketts down to the southern end of California coast. I loved Cannery Row. Those are some of my favorite books. And Travels with Charlie, because I love the humanity and I loved the observational attention that he gave to the world and to the transactions that he had. And so that resonates with me, because I'm an observational scientist by nature as a consequence of being an environmental climate scientist and now being a space scientist, planetary scientist. And by the very fact that I have to organize, humans, and I have to be attentive to their details. So perhaps not the most satisfying thing in that I can't give you a single book, but I can give you a perspective.
That's a very good perspective. Yeah, I guess, to science, you just have to expand your knowledge in horizon. So that's a very good answer. And I saw Harim said, Dr. Lin, you should write your own book. Reflecting very valuable work.
Oh,
Okay.
that's sweet.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Lin, for this inspiring and generous sharing. And I guess the student here definitely hear a lot, and definitely that rigor, curiosity, adaptivity, the three mantras that you say about scientific research is going to influence a lot of them here. Can we move on to the next page? I'm going to stop plugging anything about SHAD because Dr. Lin will definitely talk about the impact of SHAD. So, Kushi, can you move to the next page? Yes. So as Dr. Lim has said through her own story, in SHAD you can discover your passion, meet different people with the same mindset, and again find your passion and keep that curiosity going on, and that's the true purpose of people doing a SHAD. And I guess RISE does the same thing with the research. So that concludes our session today. Again, if you're interested in any of our programs, you can always drop our email or visit our website. Just simply apply to SHAD program and experience the summer of your life. So that concludes today's session, and I want to thank again Dr. Lim's wonderful sharing and the time that you have for us today. And we look forward that in the future, those bright minds here will go on to do more research and influence our planet and make humanity thrive.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great to meet you all. Thanks, and have a wonderful Sunday and Monday, depending on where you are.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. Lim.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.